Before Titanic became the most famous shipwreck in history, it was an idea. Before the iceberg, before the passengers climbed the grand staircase, and even before the first piece of steel was assembled in Belfast, there were conversations, contracts, calculations, rivalries, engineering decisions, and an extraordinary network of people and infrastructure required to make the seemingly impossible possible. We often tell Titanic's story by beginning with her departure from Southampton or by counting down the final days and hours of her maiden voyage. But how did Titanic come to exist in the first place? What decisions shaped her before she had a name? What challenges had to be overcome before construction could even begin? And how much of that story remains buried in archives, company records, engineering documents, and sources still waiting to be fully understood? A new project is attempting to answer those questions, not simply through a finished book, but through a body of research that readers can watch expand, evolve, and deepen over time. On July 31st, 2026, exactly 118 years after the contract was signed that set the Olympic-class liners in motion, 118 years ago yesterday, Titanic conception to completion officially began its own maiden voyage. Today, we're going behind the research, the discoveries, and the ambitious new way its author has chosen to share Titanic's story. Hello, and welcome to Titanic Legacy, a podcast that explores Titanic's lasting impact through conversations with creative, interesting, and inspirational people. Authors, artists, historians, actors, filmmakers, musicians, entrepreneurs, and more, who continue to keep the ship of dreams legacy not only alive, but thriving through their creative work, hobbies, storytelling, and conversations. I'm your host, Paul Carganilla, and today we have the opportunity to actually reconnect with our guest who was my guest on the 6th episode of this podcast series, exactly 2 years ago, 42 episodes ago. He's been a presenter in the past 2 consecutive years at Titanic Anniversary on the Queen Mary. Brad Payne is a Titanic researcher, author, and founder of the Titanic Legacy Society. Over the years, he has published Titanic research articles, authored Titanic Relics of the Past and Present, and his book, 1140, Analysis of Evasive Maneuvers and Damage Assessment on RMS Titanic, and presented his research at Titanic-related events and conferences. After years of research and writing, he's excited to share his newest project, Titanic Conception to Completion, which has just been released as a living research edition. What does all this mean? Well, we'll dive into it right now here on Titanic Legacy Podcast. Please join me in welcoming back Brad Payne. Hello, sir. So good to see you again.
Likewise. How you been?
I have been wonderful. It was great to see you in April in Long Beach on the Queen Mary again. What a great time that was.
It was absolutely amazing. Actually inspired what we're about to talk about, so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that.
This is a really interesting concept, and a lot of people, have kind of raised the question, okay, so it's not quite a book quite yet. What exactly is it? In your own words, author, researcher Brad Payne, what is Titanic Conception to Completion?
So it is a book that originally was supposed to be a long format book, but I was having a really hard time with finding a publisher who wanted to publish it. And so it was kind of just not really sitting around, but I kept working on it and working on it and working on it. And eventually I told myself, like, this information has to get out there somehow. And at the conference on the Queen Mary, a lot of people were talking about social media and how that's evolving and keeping people interactive. And so I said, what could I do with my book to make it interactive? And that's kind of how I landed on the Living Research Edition, where readers can be involved in the process and see how it evolves and even present information or pictures that they have, and I can put it in the book and give them credit for it and really just make the reader a part of the the history and the research itself, and hopefully draw people more into the process, while also hopefully getting them excited about learning about Titanic and what's involved with creating such a document.
What is the main place that you point people to go and gather and learn about or be a part of this?
If I had to point anybody anywhere, it'd probably be definitely newspaper archives. The whole, as far as my research, or just
Yeah,
me
this
research.
this thing that you've launched. So I feel like it's more of, obviously it's on its way to becoming a book, but right now it's like an online community, right?
Yeah, so it's going to be is presented on Flipping Book, but you have to purchase a a Gumroad access to it. So that'll give you access to the document, and then there's a Facebook site for the book that allows people to gather and share ideas and share information, and to get a hold of me if they have anything they feel like might contribute to the book. So yeah.
That's one thing I've loved about this community since I discovered and became a part of the Titanic community here on the social media and the web. And uh, it- you've created this. You started with the Titanic Legacy Society on Facebook, and now this particular project has its own Facebook group, and that's called Titanic Conception to Completion Facebook group, right?
Yep, book group. Yep.
And so I was looking at it earlier this morning, and it looks like you've got some pages or screenshots of pages published up in the group for viewers to discuss.
Yep. So I started that group. Like I said, I really wanted people to be involved in this process as much as possible and make it really easy access as far as that part of it. I did make that Facebook group page a while ago because as much as I liked this ideal, it was still on the fence of whether or not I can pull it off. And, it gets kind of nervous about doing big projects like this and holding myself accountable. So I put it up there, just kind of get the ball rolling. But now it's live and active, and people are already involving themselves and contacting me on Messenger. So it's really exciting.
I love when authors find different niches and things to develop or research and bring to light that we hadn't necessarily thought of before. What was the inspiration for conception to completion?
Well, a lot of my research papers on Encyclopedia Titanica deals with that era of Titanic's construction. I don't think that era has really been explored a lot, and that's what my research kind of showed. And then I was involved in another project from another researcher who asked me to verify some dates and stuff. And I got them all the information that they were looking for, but I had a bunch of other information. And it's really, how could I get that information out there? Now, first I looked at maybe a YouTube video, maybe a research paper, and a bunch of other things. But really, at the end of the day, there's just so much research that it became obvious that it had to be a book.
Where do you dive into? So you mentioned articles, but if it's not mainstream knowledge in a book that's already published, you do your own research and you find that in some article somewhere in the internet.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about Titanic is there's a lot of things that are known but aren't really known. For instance, the laying of Titanic's keel, was it the 22nd or was it the 31st? That was a big area of research that I did, and I think my research points directly to one date and not the other one. Um, and yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that, and just like even the voyage from Belfast to Southampton, that's been explored before, but I was able to find other articles and newspaper things that really point to a more progressive voyage. So I was able to pinpoint different locations that were never revealed before.
Conception of Titanic. You go to Belfast in the museum there, and they say it's the story you hear. It was a dinner party, and ideas that were being thrown around. Is that what is your take on the moment Titanic was conceived?
So the dinner party story, that was something that I was really interested in improving or disproving. Always when you go into research, you know the stories, you know the history, and I try not to be biased about one thing or the other. So I try to go in like, if I can prove it, great. If I can't prove it, great. Same thing with the 1140 when I went to that to the ship go full astern. And so with the dinner party, what my research has shown, and it's published on the paper already. I flesh it out more in the book, but the Titanic wasn't originally concepted when Olympic was. There's two ships being built. The gantry was being built for one for the Hamburg American line and one for the White Star Line. Obviously, the White Star Line was the Olympic, and the Hamburg American line was supposedly the Europa. And it wasn't until the Hamburg America line canceled their order that Titanic became a thing. And even at that point, it wasn't necessarily that Titanic was going to be an exact model of the Olympic. It could have been smaller, a completely different design. It wasn't sure up to that point. It wasn't until really the contract was signed on the 31st of July, 1908, that it was decided that both ships would be of the same design. But Titanic was originally never supposed to exist. It was only because the Hamburg America line canceled their order that the idea of building Titanic even came about.
Always fascinating to think of all the what ifs throughout history, not just in, the historical sense, but also Titanic story. There's already a million what ifs, but what you're saying now is that Titanic wasn't even supposed to be a thing.
Mm-hmm. And if it was going to be years and years later. It wasn't going to be at the same time. So,
Can you
yeah.
imagine? Wow. Well, those 1,500 people would probably still be here, but also this community would be gone, or wouldn't have come together in the first place, which we can argue about what would be better. Speaking of the community, I want to say hello to Nina, who's listening live to the live stream in Long Island, New York. Thanks. That's all the way
Hello.
across the country from us. I'm down in Southern California. Brad's up in Seattle, and we're just bouncing around the world here. Um, Last time we talked, over 2 years ago, I can't believe it goes by in a blink, but
Really does.
I was getting ready for my first trip to Belfast, and you were saying you had been there and it was a fantastic trip. What about visiting that historic, well, now it's the Titanic Hotel, but where the museum and the Harlan and Wolff's offices are? What sticks with you, and did it inspire any of this new project?
Um, what sticks with me is just really just how small things are. Like when you think Titanic and how big, and like Harlan and Wolff and how big it was, like the buildings are actually really close together and really small. And that area that was the gantry, even though the ships were large and huge, you can walk it fairly quickly. Like it is not that big. And so the scale was really what impressed me the most. Was you have this large ship that is supposed to be the biggest thing in the world, but you walk and you're like, it's not really. I don't know. It was impressive, but at the same time, it wasn't what my brain was making it seem to be. So that was really a shock to me. As far as inspiration, absolutely, the Thompson engraving dock was probably one of the highlights. That was huge. That was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. That was really impressive. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go down into it. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but hopefully one day I'll be able to. Walking the nomadic was amazing also, and seeing that and experiencing that and being able to touch the steel and be like, that was built and this is a steel from that time. Like being connected in that way is absolutely unbelievable. And I highly recommend anybody to go there and experience that. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that this book will hopefully allow me to travel there and maybe do a lecture or something. If anybody's listening out there has contacts.
I can't remember if we talked about it last time, but was Thomas Andrews' office open when you were there?
I don't remember. I think so. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I took a lot of pictures, but it's really just like a whirlwind of activities. So I can't remember exactly what I saw and what I did until I go through my pictures.
We spent 2 nights in Belfast, one night at the Titanic Hotel, and I wish it was a week. And hopefully we'll get back there at some point. But I loved being in Thomas Andrews' office and just feeling the energy in there. But speaking of everything being smaller than you expect, in the museum, they have some of the paperwork with records and some of the things that Thomas Andrews had written. and it's tiny. Doing your research, do you ever have to bust out the magnifying glass?
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, not even the magnifying glass, but sometimes you got to blow it up on the computer, which even makes it worse sometimes because it's legible a little bit, but then you blow it up and it's all pixelated, and you're like, I don't know what that is. And you'll see that in the book too. Like there's little footnotes in there, like I think this says this, but I'm not quite sure. But that's the only way it makes sense. So I'm very honest with the fact that I can't read some of it.
I was just so impressed by the penmanship. I'm like, I can hardly read this. I have 20/20 vision, and he wrote this in pencil on this
Mhm.
sheet of paper. It's wild. Um,
That's one of the things I like doing too is going through and because I got my degree in criminal justice, so like investigating and all that stuff has always been a passion of mine. But research analysis with handwriting and looking at seeing like, oh, that looks like an F. Is there any other F on this paper that looks like that? And kind of like building like, oh, that's what his T's look like, or that's what his I's look like, and figuring out what is written based on other letters on the paper. Like I find that fascinating. I can do that all day long.
the echoes in time are just fascinating. The being in the drawing rooms and, like I said, looking at this piece of paper that Thomas Andrews wrote on, and this is his penmanship. It's like the next best thing to seeing an autograph all these years later. But I also wanted to say we talked about bouncing around the planet. Rebecca's in the live chat saying hello from Sweden. Thanks for dropping in again. So tell me about this is as we mentioned, kind of a different kind of media release or research release, and it's happening. The first part is out. Tell us about like the sequential release of it that you have planned.
So yeah, small updates will be done as I see fit. Really, if it's a major small update, I might update it in the moment. If it's a smaller update, I'll wait until the chapters are released. But it'll be released chapter to chapter now. So chapter 5 will be next. After that will be chapter 6, and then 7, and then 8. Chapter 5 is pretty much in the can, ready to go. Hopefully, I'll get that out in a couple of weeks. I just got to do some editing with the end notes. Then chapter 6 is about three-quarters of the way. Chapter 7 is 1911 is a very busy year for Harlan and Wolff and White Star Line. So it's a very big chapter. It's almost 100 pages in and of itself. So that's going to definitely take some time to edit and go through. And if readers or audience brings me more information, then I got to simulate that in there too, and might get even bigger. So yeah, let's go out chapter to chapter up until the last chapter, chapter 8, and then I'll go through and edit all the appendices and get out there for a final downloadable copy of it.
I deal with this on from a creative point of view, creative aspect. I've been doing a lot of fiction writing lately, and I have trouble deciding when I'm done with a chapter. I'll write something and then I'll go back to it a week later and I'll want to make tweaks, or then I'll show it to somebody and they'll have little notes then and I want to make it better. And uh, I find that it is a huge challenge deciding when I'm done. How do you do that?
I don't, and that's part of the reason why I put this out there finally, because I could have worked on it for another 3 years. Originally, like I said, I was going to give it to a publisher and get it published through a professional people, and they let me know when it's done. But since I'm doing it on my own, I I have to have it out there because otherwise I won't hold myself accountable, but hopefully the buyers and everything will hold me accountable that I have to get stuff done and I have to get it done in a timely manner. So that's the ideal. That's the hope.
If you haven't listened to the first episode, episode 6 of Titanic Legacy Podcast, where we talked about his first book, 1140, do you ever go back to this and think, oh, I wish I could change something or other?
There's a few things that I put on my website, little updates here, but not a lot. Honestly, I haven't read it in a while. I read parts of it when people ask me questions, but not the whole thing. If anything, I'd make it more leaner. I definitely make it more concise in a couple areas, but besides that, I think the research still holds up. I know a lot of the topics in there, the conclusions that I made have not made the popular Titanic story. during the anniversaries and stuff. I watch all the live streams and everything, and my conclusions have not really been part of those. So, but who knows? Maybe one day they'll be more accepted. If not, it is what it is. But all I can do is put up the research and what I interpret as being.
It's got to be a challenge. But I mean, in your case, it's all research based, so it's not creative. Like you wouldn't change anything because it's not fiction. But it was interesting hearing writers like Don Lynch or the Sea of Glass people say, "Oh, I wish I could have edited this or have another edition when this is and this information has come out and I could change that." But that's what I'm so fascinated by in this new project of yours on Gumroad and how you can just go in and update things as you learn new stuff and the consumer, they pay for the book, but they know they can be confident that they will always, anytime they click in to read it, they're going to have the most up to date stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
And remind me how I've got the links in the description of the video and the episode, but what was that? A Gumroad?
So yeah, Gumroad is where you purchase the link. The publication itself is on Flipping Book. It's a digital book reader, and then you get the link to that via Gumroad. If you go to Flipping Book and search it, it's unsearchable, and make sure to click that part off so you can't find it off of Flipping Book. So you have to get the Gumroad link to get access to the publication.
So you pay, it looks like I'm looking at the Gumroad website now. It's $25 to get in here on the ground floor. And then I think it says as major portions are completed and released, the costs will go up.
Correct. So it's $25 initially to get access to the book, but you get all the updates and the eventual completed downloadable edition for free. I mean, no additional cost. But once I release chapter 5, the price is going to go up. Once I release chapter 6, the price is going to go up. So the buying cost is going to gradually increase as the book progresses. But as soon as you buy in, everything else is covered by that cost already. So you're not paying any extra once you buy in.
Get in on the ground floor, jump in now while the getting is good. Will this ever be published?
That is the hope. That is the ideal. Like I said, no publisher picked it up, so it's kind of all up to me to format and add it and do all the hard work, which is, again, part of the reason why I just want it out there now, because otherwise it'd take me forever to get the information out there. And there's a lot of good information in there. A lot of. It's hard to say new information. I hate saying new information because I could find it, so anybody could find it. But information that hasn't really been publicized yet. So I think a lot of people will find value in it, and I hope that they learn something new or changes their perspective on things.
I don't have any experience with book publishers or anything like that, but I find it hard to believe that once this is done and they can see the work you've done and that you already have a following who has bought into it, that they wouldn't want to publish it. So I'm sending you good thoughts. Polly's good juju.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, the History Press, who published my last book, they were kind enough to be excited about it. My rep from the last one, but their head publisher is like, "Oh, we actually have a book coming out that's kind of similar to what you're doing, so we're going to have to pass on this." And it turns out to be Mark Chernside's new book, Titanic and Olympic, which is kind of around the same idea. There is definitely some overlap, but that was super exciting to know that he had a new book coming out. And yeah, it was good timing on his part, bad timing on my part, but his book is amazing. So if you haven't read his book yet, absolutely please check it out.
Before I let you go, I know you've got a hard out in a few minutes, but we I'm always, fascinated by the creative process and how people who do this kind of thing as a hobby, because I know you've got a full-time job. I've got a full-time job. I know there's no money in podcasting. I make a few dollars to keep my podcast afloat on my Patreon, but I'm not doing it for money. Um, how do you find the time? And when?
So I usually wake up 2 hours before I have to be at work, and that first hour is dedicated to working on the project. And
Wow.
then last hour is getting ready for work and driving to work. So
That's the way I got to do it. I usually wait till the kids are asleep, but then I'm just tired and I don't want to do anything. So I got to get up before work and work on my creative stuff, is what you're saying.
yeah, 4 o'clock comes early, but it's definitely more productive than late at night for sure.
Yeah. You must have strong coffee.
I do, and a whole pot of it. So
Anything else we didn't touch on that you want the listeners to know?
I don't think so. I really do appreciate you having me on again, and hopefully, like I said, people find value in Titanic conception to completion, and hopefully they enjoy it. Like that's all I really want is people to get excited about Titanic, get excited about researching, be involved, and dip your toes in the water. And feel free to message me about something if you think it deserves a place in the book. It'll be awesome.
Try new wings, try new wings, try new things, spread your wings, try new things. If you're passionate about something, follow your heart's fire, get out there and do it. And I want to say thank you to Brad Payne for joining me once again here on the podcast. You, sir, are an inspiration, the research that you do and the commitment that you have to this passion. I love it and appreciate it. And if you at home enjoyed this episode, please be sure you're subscribed, rate, leave a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Let's say thank you one last time to our guest, Brad Payne. And thank you all at home for listening in, tuning in, giving us these minutes of your day. And until the next episode, seize the day, follow your heart's fire, and make each day count. Bye, everybody.